The massive conference hall hummed with an uncomfortable silence. Lieutenant Jae-sung Park stood perfectly still, feeling the weight of 1,000 alien eyes watching him. He was the only human in the room, surrounded by the tall, iridescent beings of the Luminaran royal court. Their skin seemed to shimmer with an inner light, changing colors with each breath and emotion. Jae-sung adjusted his standard-issue diplomatic uniform. It was a simple gray suit, crisp and plain compared to the elaborate, flowing robes of the Luminaran officials. He knew he looked different. He knew he felt different. But today, he would prove that humans belonged here. The conference was supposed to be a routine diplomatic meeting. The Galactic Confederation had recently recognized humanity as a potential partner, but most alien species still saw humans as newcomers. Wild, unpredictable. Jae-sung had heard all the comments. Some called humans primitive, others called them dangerous. He gripped the data pad in his hand. Inside were detailed reports about human achievements, technological innovations, and diplomatic successes. Numbers don't lie, he thought to himself. Humans might be young in galactic terms, but they were quick learners. At the far end of the hall sat Princess Hana. She was impossible to miss. While other Luminaran royals wore elaborate headdresses and multi-layered robes, she wore a simple dark blue dress that looked almost human in its design. Her eyes were different too. Where other Luminaran eyes seemed to swirl with multiple colors, hers were a steady, deep brown that reminded Jae-sung of Earth's forests. She was watching him, not with the usual mixture of curiosity and mild disgust that most Luminaran officials showed. Her gaze was different, calculating, interested. The lead diplomat began speaking. His voice was not a sound, but a vibration that seemed to pass directly through Jae-sung's mind. Most humans would have found the experience uncomfortable. Jae-sung had trained for years to handle such telepathic communications without showing any weakness. The human representative will now present his proposal, the lead diplomat announced. Jae-sung stepped forward. His movements were smooth, practiced. Years of military training had taught him how to move with purpose and confidence. He activated his data pad, and a holographic display burst to life above the central conference table. The display showed a complex network of trade routes, diplomatic connections, and potential technological exchanges. What made it unique was how human systems were integrated. Not forced, not aggressive, but adaptable, flexible. Princess Hana leaned forward slightly. Her advisors around her looked confused, but she seemed intrigued. Jae-sung began to speak. His voice was clear and steady. "The human proposal is simple," he said. "We do not seek to replace or compete. We seek to collaborate, to find unique solutions that benefit everyone." A murmur went through the room. Humans were not known for being so diplomatic. They were known for being direct, sometimes too direct. But Jae-sung was different. He understood that diplomacy was an art, a delicate dance of words, intentions, and unspoken meanings. As he continued his presentation, he noticed Princess Hana's expression changing. The slight tilt of her head, the way her fingers moved almost imperceptibly. She was listening, really listening. In that moment, Jae-sung didn't know it, but he had already begun to change everything. The explosion rocked the diplomatic complex. Glass shattered. Walls trembled. For a split second, everything went silent. Jae-sung was moving before anyone else could react. His military training kicked in instantly. While the Luminaran officials froze in shock, he was already calculating, analyzing, protecting. Princess Hana found herself suddenly pulled behind a large ceremonial pillar. Jae-sung's strong hand gripped her arm, his body creating a shield between her and the chaos. She could feel the tension in his muscles, the rapid calculation in his movements. "Stay down," he whispered, his voice calm and clear. The Luminaran security team was in complete disarray. Their telepathic communication systems were somehow blocked. Alarms blared. Smoke filled the conference hall. But Jae-sung moved with a purpose that seemed almost supernatural to the alien observers. 3 small devices appeared in his hands. They looked like simple communication tools, but Jae-sung knew better. Standard issue emergency response kit. One for communication, one for threat analysis, one for emergency defense. Princess Hannah watched in fascination. The human was unlike anything she had ever seen. While her own security team stumbled and tried to reestablish their telepathic links, this human was working mechanically, systematically. "How did you?" she started to ask. Jae-sung cut her off. "Not now," he said simply. His eyes scanned the room, tracking potential threats, identifying safe paths, calculating risks. Another explosion. Closer this time. But Jae-sung remained steady. He pulled out a small device from his uniform. It looked like a simple communication tool, but when he activated it, a holographic map of the entire complex appeared. "Terrorist infiltration," he muttered, more to himself than to the princess. 3 entry points. Quantum disruptors, blocking telepathic communications. Princess Hannah was shocked. How could a human know so much? The Luminaran security system was supposed to be unbreakable. Their telepathic network was meant to predict and prevent any threat before it could even form. Jae-sung's fingers moved quickly across the holographic display. He wasn't just watching. He was solving, planning, anticipating. "Stay here," he told the princess, but his voice wasn't harsh. It was a request, a strategy. Before she could protest, he was moving. Quick, precise, like a machine, but with a human's intuition. The Luminaran security team watched in confusion as Jae-sung navigated through the complex. He didn't have their telepathic abilities. He didn't have their advanced sensors. But he had something else, something they couldn't understand. Human adaptability. In the next 10 minutes, Jae-sung did what an entire Luminaran security team could not. He isolated the terrorist communication channels. He tracked their movement paths. He predicted their next steps. When the dust settled, the terrorists were neutralized. The diplomatic complex was safe. And Princess Hannah realized something important. Humans were not just another species to be studied. They were something else entirely. Jae-sung returned, slightly dusty but completely composed. A small cut on his cheek was the only sign that he had been in any danger. "Are you hurt?" he asked the princess, not as a formal question, but as a genuine concern. Princess Hannah looked at him. For the first time, she saw beyond the human. She saw a protector, a strategic mind, something special. "No," she replied. "Thanks to you." The Royal Academy of Diplomatic Studies was not ready for Jae-sung Park. Large windows looked out over the crystal spires of the Luminaran capital. Hundreds of potential diplomats sat in the grand lecture hall, their skin shifting colors with each passing emotion. And there was Jae-sung, the only human, standing completely still, his skin a constant tan brown. Princess Hannah had arranged for him to receive advanced diplomatic training. It was both a test and an opportunity. Many in the royal court believed he would fail. They whispered about humans being too unpredictable, too emotional, too direct. The first challenge came during a complex simulation. Luminaran diplomats were trained to sense emotions through telepathic links. They moved like a single organism, thinking together, feeling together. Their communication was a dance of shared thoughts and collective understanding. Jae-sung was different. When the simulation began, the other students immediately connected. Their minds merged into a single network, sharing strategies, emotions, and intentions. But Jae-sung stood alone. No connection, no shared thoughts. The instructor, a senior diplomat named Kira, looked disappointed. "Diplomatic success requires collective thinking," she explained. Her words were both spoken and telepathically transmitted. Humans cannot understand this. Jae-sung listened carefully. Then he did something unexpected. Instead of trying to join their telepathic network, he began to explain his approach. His words were simple, clear, logical. "Collective thinking has limits," he said. "Individual perspective brings unique solutions. The room went silent. Such a statement was almost heretical in Luminaran culture. Princess Hana, who was observing the training, leaned forward. She saw something the others did not. While the other students thought as one, Jae-sung thought independently. He analyzed. He questioned. He saw possibilities others missed. The simulation continued. A complex diplomatic scenario involving 3 different star systems and multiple conflicting interests. The Luminaran students moved as one, their collective mind working through standard diplomatic protocols. Jae-sung took a different path. He identified the core problem differently. Where others saw a diplomatic challenge, he saw a human resources issue. Where they saw conflict, he saw opportunity for individual negotiation. His solution was so different that it shocked everyone. When the simulation ended, the instructor looked confused. "Your approach breaks every diplomatic protocol," Kira said. Jae-sung smiled. "Sometimes, breaking protocols creates new possibilities." Princess Hana could not hide her smile. The other students looked shocked. Their color-changing skin flickered between confusion, anger, and something else. Respect. During the break, other students approached Jae-sung, not to connect telepathically, but to ask questions, real questions, about his thinking, his approach, his perspective. They had never seen anything like him. Princess Hana walked over to Jae-sung. "You challenged everything they know," she said. "Sometimes," Jae-sung replied, "the best way to understand a system is to look at it from the outside." The instructor watched them. For the first time, she saw something different in the human. Not a problem to be solved, but a different way of thinking. A different way of seeing the universe. Humans were not just another species to be categorized. They were something else entirely. Something that could change everything. The council chamber was quiet. Too quiet. Jae-sung could feel the tension. His military training had taught him to read rooms, to sense danger before it appeared. Today, something was different. Something was wrong. Princess Hana sat at the head of the long crystal table. Her advisors surrounded her, their skin shifting colors like living mood rings. Most were a deep blue, a color of concern and hidden anger. Lord Divin, the oldest and most respected advisor, spoke first. His voice was smooth, but Jae-sung could hear the edge beneath his words. "The human representative has been granted too much access," Devin said. His skin flickered between shades of gray and dark blue. "He is a security risk." Jae-sung remained still. He knew better than to interrupt. Princess Hana watched carefully. She understood the game being played. Lord Divin was not just speaking. He was moving pieces on a complex political chessboard. "Explain," she said simply. Lord Devon produced a data crystal. Holographic images flickered to life. They showed human communication logs, diplomatic reports, strategic analyses. Each document seemed carefully selected to make Jae-sung look dangerous. "He has access to our most sensitive communication channels," Devon continued. "A human, an outsider, someone who cannot even connect telepathically." The other advisors murmured. Their skin began to shift more rapidly, creating a dizzy display of colors and emotions. Jae-sung knew exactly what was happening. This was a political attack, a carefully planned move to remove him from his position, to push humans away from the Luminaran diplomatic corps. Princess Hana saw it too, but she did something unexpected. "Show me the full reports," she demanded. Lord Divan looked surprised. This was not the response he expected. Jae-sung remained calm. He knew his work spoke for itself. Every report, every analysis he had submitted was thorough, precise, helpful. The data crystals expanded. More information appeared, but something strange happened. The more information that came out, the weaker Lord Divan's argument became. Jae-sung's reports were not just good. They were exceptional. He had identified potential diplomatic challenges before they happened. He had suggested solutions that saved time, resources, and prevented potential conflicts. His human perspective brought something unique to the Luminaran diplomatic system. Lord Devon's skin began to turn a pale green, the color of defeat. "These reports," Princess Hannah said slowly, "are remarkable." The other advisors looked shocked. They had expected a takedown. Instead, they were witnessing a defense. Jae-sung said nothing. He didn't need to. Lord Devon tried one last move. "But he is still a human," he argued. "He cannot be trusted." Princess Hannah stood up. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "Humans have proven themselves," she said. "They bring something we do not have. Individual thinking, creative solutions, a different way of seeing the universe." The room went silent. Jae-sung felt something he had not expected. Respect. Not just from the princess, but from the entire room. Lord Devon had planned to remove him. Instead, he had made Jae-sung stronger. Political intrigue, Jae-sung knew, was always a delicate dance. And today, he had danced perfectly. The research lab was unlike anything Jae-sung had ever seen. Walls that changed color, floating holographic displays, machines that seemed to think and move on their own. Luminaran scientists watched him carefully. They were used to working together, their minds connected in ways humans could never understand. But today was different. Today, Jae-sung was here to prove something. "Communication is more than just sending messages," he explained, pointing to the complex display. "It's about understanding." Princess Hannah stood at the back of the lab, observing quietly. She had seen many research presentations, but this was something special. Jae-sung had been working on a breakthrough, a device that could bridge the gap between telepathic and verbal communication, something that seemed impossible to the Luminaran scientists. The lead researcher, Dr. Lyra, looked skeptical. Her skin was a mix of deep purple and gray, colors of doubt and curiosity. "Humans cannot understand telepathic communication," she said, not as an insult, just as a simple fact. Jae-sung smiled. He was used to people underestimating humans. He activated his device. It looked simple, a small silver disc with complex patterns etched into its surface. No wires, no visible power source. "Watch," he said simply. The device began to work. It didn't just translate words. It translated intentions, emotions, the subtle layers of communication that usually got lost. Dr. Lyra's eyes went wide. The other scientists leaned forward. The device was doing something impossible. It was creating a bridge between two completely different ways of thinking. Telepathic communication worked through shared consciousness. Human communication worked through individual expression. This device merged both. Princess Hannah stepped forward. She could see what the others were just beginning to understand. This was more than a communication tool. This was a way to connect different species, different ways of thinking. Jae-sung explained how he did it. He had studied human psychology. Luminaran, telepathic patterns, communication theories from 100 different species. He didn't just copy existing technology. He reimagined it. "Communication is about understanding," he repeated, "not just sending messages." The scientists began to test the device. They spoke. They thought. They shared emotions. And the device translated everything perfectly. Dr. Lyra's skin began to change color. From doubt, purple and gray, to excitement, bright blue and green. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Nothing is impossible," Jae-sung replied. "Just not yet understood." Princess Hannah watched carefully. She saw something the scientists did not. This was more than a technological breakthrough. This was a cultural breakthrough. Humans were not just another species to be studied. They were problem solvers, innovators, people who could see solutions where others saw only problems. The lab was quiet, but something important was happening. A new way of understanding was being born. Jae-sung looked at Princess Hannah. She was smiling, not just with her lips, but with her eyes. He had done more than create a communication device. He had shown that humans were special, unique, different, and that difference was something to be celebrated. The royal gardens were silent. Moonlight reflected off crystal trees that looked like frozen music. Jae-sung stood alone, watching the strange beauty of the Luminaran night. Princess Hannah approached quietly. Her footsteps made no sound on the silver-blue ground. She watched him for a moment before speaking. "You know this is impossible," she said. Jae-sung turned. He understood what she meant. Not just the words, but everything behind them. Luminaran royal law was clear. No royal could form a deep connection with a non-telepathic species. It was more than a law. It was a fundamental part of their culture, their way of being. "Impossible," Jae-sung repeated, or just not yet understood. His words made her smile. It was the same smile she had given him during the communication device demonstration. A smile that said more than words could. Their relationship had grown slowly, not through telepathic connection, but through something different, something the Luminaran court could not understand. Shared respect, shared vision, individual choice. A critical mission was coming. The most important diplomatic task either of them had ever faced, and they both knew their personal feelings could complicate everything. "The Krell negotiations," Princess Hannah said. "Everything depends on this." The Krell were a difficult species, aggressive, territorial. They had been blocking trade routes that could help millions of people across multiple star systems. Jae-sung had a plan, but it was risky, completely different from standard diplomatic approaches. "They respond to individual challenge," he explained, "not collective negotiation." Princess Hannah understood. The Luminaran way would be to send a collective diplomatic team, to use telepathic communication to find a shared solution. But Jae-sung saw something different. The Krell respected individual strength, personal commitment, something the collective-minded Luminarians struggled to understand. "You'll be risking everything," she said. He looked at her, not just with his eyes, but with his entire being. The Luminaran court was watching. They wanted him to fail. Many believed a human could never understand true diplomacy, true connection. But Jae-sung was different. The mission would test everything. His diplomatic skills, his understanding of the Krell, his relationship with Princess Hannah. Some risks were worth taking. "Trust me," he said simply. Princess Hannah's skin began to change color, not randomly, but with purpose, shifting between colors that showed complex emotions. Concern, hope, something deeper. Royal advisors would be watching. They would see this as a challenge to their system, to their way of thinking. Jae-sung knew the risks. If he failed, he would be removed from the diplomatic corps, possibly even banned from Luminaran space. If he succeeded, everything would change. Princess Hannah touched his hand. A simple gesture, but for Luminarians, it meant something profound, a connection beyond telepathy, beyond words. "We do this together," she said. The moonlight caught her eyes. They were no longer just brown. They were something else, a promise, a possibility. The Krell negotiations would change everything, and they both knew it. The warning came without sound, just a sudden change in the galaxy's energy. Massive dark shapes appeared at the edge of the Luminaran star system. They were unlike anything anyone had seen before. Not ships, not machines, something else entirely. Jae-sung was the first to react. "Those are not conventional attackers," he said, studying the holographic display. His fingers moved quickly across the screens, analyzing patterns that others could not see. Princess Hannah watched him. The Luminaran military was frozen. Their collective telepathic network was confused, uncertain, but Jae-sung was calculating, planning. The incoming threat was massive. Multiple star systems would be destroyed if nothing was done. Millions of lives were at risk. Luminaran military doctrine was simple: defend, protect, use collective telepathic strategies. But those strategies had never faced a threat like this. We need to think differently, Jae-sung said. The military commanders looked shocked. Thinking differently was not part of their training. They were used to acting as one mind, one purpose, one strategy. Jae-sung saw something else. Patterns, weaknesses, opportunities. They have a central communication network, he explained. But it's not like ours. It's more mechanical, more predictable. Princess Hana understood what he meant. Humans saw threats differently, not as a collective problem, but as a series of individual challenges to be solved. The first wave of attacks began. Luminar and defense shields flickered. Their standard protective systems were not working. Jae-sung had already prepared a backup plan. We don't fight their strength, he said. We attack their weakness. His strategy was simple but brilliant. Instead of a direct confrontation, he proposed targeting the communication systems of the attacking force. Disrupt their coordination, break their collective thinking. The Luminar and military had never considered such an approach. Princess Hana saw the beauty of his plan. While others saw a massive threat, Jae-sung saw a complex system with breakable parts. How? Asked the lead military commander. Jae-sung showed them a complex set of signals, communication patterns, disruption techniques that combined human creativity with Luminar and technological understanding. The first test worked perfectly. A small section of the attacking force suddenly went dark. Confused. Disorganized. Humans adapt, Jae-sung said simply. We find solutions where others see only problems. The battle continued. Each moment showed something new. The Luminar and military began to understand. Humans brought something special to warfare. Not just strength, but thinking. Creative problem solving. Princess Hana watched Jae-sung work. He was not just fighting. He was solving a complex puzzle. Each move carefully considered. Each strategy uniquely human. The attacking force began to fall apart. Not through massive force, but through intelligent disruption. Hours passed. The threat grew smaller, controllable. When it was over, something had changed. The Luminar and military saw humans differently. Not as a young species, but as potential partners, problem solvers. Jae-sung looked tired, but satisfied. Princess Hana smiled. They had done more than win a battle. They had changed how two species sought each other. Humanity had proven something important. Intelligence was not about collective thinking. It was about creative solutions. The Grand Hall was silent. Thousands of representatives from different star systems watched carefully. Jae-sung stood next to Princess Hana. His uniform was simple, clean, different from the elaborate robes of other diplomats. The Galactic Council meeting was about to change everything. After the recent battle, everything was different. The way species looked at each other, the way they understood cooperation. Humanity had proven something important. Princess Hana spoke first. Her voice was clear, strong. We are here because of a simple truth, she said. Different ways of thinking make us stronger. The representatives listened. Many remembered the recent galactic threat, how close they had come to total destruction. Jae-sung had been the key. His unique approach to problem solving had saved millions of lives, not through massive force, but through intelligent strategy. The Luminar and diplomatic corps had changed. They no longer saw humans as outsiders. They saw them as partners. Collective thinking has limits, Jae-sung explained. Individual perspective brings new solutions. His words were simple, but powerful. Representatives from dozens of star systems looked at him, some with respect, some with curiosity, all with a new understanding. The Krell delegation, once aggressive and difficult, now sat quietly. They had seen Jae-sung's approach during the recent conflict. They understood his method of negotiation. Princess Hana's hand briefly touched Jae-sung's, a small gesture, but it meant something more. Their relationship had become a symbol, not just of personal connection, but of how different species could work together. The council voted, unanimously, to create a new diplomatic approach, one that valued individual thinking, creative solutions, different perspectives. Humanity was no longer just a new species in the galaxy. They were a key partner. Jae-sung remembered his first diplomatic meeting. How alien everything had seemed. How impossible his success had looked. Now, everything was different. The Luminoran advisors who once tried to remove him now looked at him with respect. They had been wrong. Humans brought something special to galactic diplomacy. "We are stronger together," Princess Hannah said. "But that doesn't mean we must think the same." Her words echoed through the hall. Jae-sung saw the future, not as a collective vision, but as a collection of individual possibilities. The meeting continued, but something had changed. Permanently. Humanity had proven its worth. Not through military might, not through advanced technology, but through something more powerful. Creative thinking. Individual perspective. The ability to see solutions where others saw only problems. As the meeting ended, Jae-sung looked at Princess Hannah. She smiled, a smile that said more than words could express. They had done more than win a diplomatic battle. They had changed how the galaxy understood cooperation. Humanity was no longer just a young species. They were a force of innovation, a beacon of possibility. The research station orbited a distant star. Soft blue light filtered through massive windows. Jae-sung and Princess Hannah stood together, watching the galaxy spread out before them. Years had passed since their first meeting. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed. "Remember when they thought we couldn't do this?" Jae-sung asked. Princess Hannah smiled. Her skin shifted colors softly, a mix of memories and emotions that no human could fully understand. Their partnership had become something more than anyone expected, not just a diplomatic success, not just a personal connection, but a bridge between different ways of thinking. The research station was proof of everything they had worked for. Scientists from 50 different species worked together, not by forcing everyone to think the same way, but by celebrating their differences. Luminoran researchers worked beside human analysts. Krell engineers collaborated with species that once were their enemies. Individual thinking combined into something stronger. A young researcher approached them. She was half Luminoran, half human, one of the first of her kind. "The communication network is ready," she said. Jae-sung's communication device, the one he had created years ago, had evolved. Now it connected minds across the galaxy. Not by forcing connection, but by helping different species understand each other. Princess Hannah touched a control panel. Holographic displays showed connections forming. Complex networks of communication that respected individual thought. "We are not the same," she said, "and that is our greatest strength." The station hummed with possibility. Outside, ships from different species moved together. Not as a single force, but as a collection of unique perspectives. Jae-sung remembered his first diplomatic mission. How impossible everything had seemed. How many had doubted humans could contribute anything significant. Now, humanity was at the center of galactic innovation. The young researcher watched them. To her, Jae-sung and Princess Hannah were legends, a symbol of what was possible when different species truly listened to each other. "How did you do it?" she asked. Jae-sung laughed, a simple human sound that still surprised some alien listeners. "We chose to see each other," he said, "not as enemies, not as different, but as potential." Princess Hannah's hand found his, a gesture that still meant something special, a connection that went beyond telepathy, beyond words. The research station continued its work, solving problems no single species could solve alone, creating solutions that respected individual thinking. Outside, the galaxy moved. Stars burned. Planets turned. Species communicated. Everything was different now. Humanity had proven something important. Innovation comes from difference, from individual perspective, from the courage to see things differently. Jae-sung looked at Princess Hannah. She looked back. No words were needed. They had changed everything. And this was just the beginning.